The Delta Force commander said, "No sniper can make that shot." Then she eliminated 4 enemy colonels with surgical precision. 26-year-old Master Sergeant Elena Rodriguez crouched behind the rocky outcropping, adjusting the scope on her Chaytak M200 intervention sniper rifle for the 100th time. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a tight bun beneath her ghillie suit hood, and her steel-gray eyes remained fixed on the target area, 2,380 yards away, through the high-powered optics dot to the Delta Force team positioned around her. She looked like just another Army sniper providing overwatch support. What they didn't know was that Master Sergeant Elena Rodriguez was about to attempt the most impossible sequence of shots in modern military history. But Elena Rodriguez was far from ordinary. For 6 years, she had been Special Operations Command's most closely guarded secret, a sniper whose accuracy defied physics and whose kill record was classified at levels that didn't officially exist. Her call sign, Ghost, had been earned after she eliminated 31 high-value targets in a single deployment, without ever being detected. Army Rangers called her legend. Navy SEALs spoke of her in whispers, and even paramilitary operatives showed respect when her name came up in classified briefings. But today, she was working with Delta Force operators who had no idea they were in the presence of the military's most lethal precision shooter. Elena's background was as unique as her shooting ability. Born to a family of aerospace engineers in Denver, she had inherited an almost supernatural understanding of advanced mathematics and quantum physics. Her father, Dr. Miguel Rodriguez, was a trajectory systems engineer who worked on intercontinental ballistic missile guidance systems, while her mother, Dr. Sarah Sean Rodriguez, was a professor of theoretical physics at the Colorado School of Mines. Elena had grown up calculating complex mathematical equations and understanding the intricate physics that govern projectile motion across extreme distances. This morning's mission should have been straightforward intelligence gathering. Satellite reconnaissance had identified a critical meeting of enemy field commanders taking place in a fortified mountain stronghold deep in hostile territory. The mission parameters were simple: observe and report. The target complex sat on a mountain ridge nearly 2,380 yards from the closest concealed position, well beyond the effective range of standard sniper engagement protocols. No shots were to be taken. This was strictly a surveillance operation to gather intelligence on enemy leadership structure and strategic planning. Colonel Marcus Reaper Davidson, the Delta Force team leader, had been skeptical about including an Army sniper in their reconnaissance mission from the beginning. Davidson was an 18-year veteran with 4 Bronze Stars, 2 Silver Stars, and a reputation for preferring to work exclusively with Delta Force personnel. Delta operators had their own snipers, their own methods, and their own standards that had been refined through decades of the most dangerous operations in military history. Bringing in outside personnel always complicated operational security and team dynamics, but orders from General Patricia Morrison herself had been explicit. Master Sergeant Rodriguez was to accompany the mission as the primary long-range observation specialist. Her personnel file, what little Davidson had been allowed to see, showed standard Army sniper qualifications and routine deployments. Nothing. That explained why a 4-star general would personally assign an Army sergeant to a classified Delta Force reconnaissance operation. The morning had started with a pre-dawn helicopter insertion 30 miles from the target area. The team had moved through treacherous mountain terrain for 8 hours, navigating rocky passes and dense forest coverage, while avoiding enemy patrol routes that intelligence had identified through satellite surveillance. Elena had moved with the fluid efficiency of someone who had done this type of insertion hundreds of times, her movements precise and silent, despite the challenging terrain. "Rodriguez," Colonel Davidson called out, keeping his voice low as he moved to her position. What's your assessment of the target area? Elena continued studying the mountain stronghold through her scope, noting defensive positions, guard rotations, and structural weaknesses with the methodical precision of someone who had done this thousands of times before. Her training had taught her to see patterns that others missed, to identify vulnerabilities in enemy positions that could be exploited if the situation required it. 4 primary buildings, sir. Main structure appears to be the meeting location. Heavy security presence. Approximately 28 hostiles visible on perimeter patrol patterns. Defensive positions include machine gun nests at elevation points Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. Any visual confirmation of the high-value targets we're supposed to identify? Elena made microscopic adjustments to her scope's focus, bringing the distant building into crystal-clear resolution. Through the advanced optics, she could see movement in the upper floors of the main building, heat signatures that indicated a significant gathering of personnel. Negative on visual confirmation of specific individuals, sir, but thermal imaging suggests multiple heat signatures concentrated in the primary building's upper floors. Meeting is definitely in progress. I estimate 16 to 20 personnel inside the main conference area. Colonel Davidson nodded and moved to coordinate with his team's communications specialist. The Delta Force unit consisted of 10 operators, all veterans of multiple combat deployments in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and classified operations in other theaters around the world. They had been observing the mountain stronghold for 4 hours, documenting personnel movements, communication patterns, and security protocols using the most advanced surveillance equipment available to special operations forces. Each member of the team was a specialist in their field. Staff Sergeant Sheikh Viper Thompson was their communications expert, maintaining secure satellite links with Joint Special Operations Command. Sergeant First Class Maria Santos was their demolition specialist, capable of breaching any fortification or eliminating any structure. Technical Sergeant Kevin Hawk Williams served as their forward observer and tactical coordinator. The team had established their observation post in a natural rocky formation that provided both concealment and excellent sight lines to the target area. Advanced camouflage netting and thermal masking equipment made their position virtually invisible to enemy surveillance, while their elevated position gave them a comprehensive view of the entire mountain. Stronghold complex. At exactly 0847 hours. Colonel Davidson's secure radio crackled with an encrypted transmission from JSOC headquarters. The message was brief, but would fundamentally change their mission parameters. Elena listened carefully to the one-sided conversation, her tactical instincts telling her that their reconnaissance mission was about to become something entirely different. Davidson's expression shifted immediately from routine surveillance mode to high-stakes tactical assessment. His years of experience in special operations had taught him to recognize when a mission was evolving from information gathering to direct action. "What's JSOC's directive, sir?" Staff Sergeant Thompson asked, knowing that whatever they had just received would change everything about their current operation. Intelligence has confirmed positive identification of 4 high-value targets currently present in the main building. Colonel Ahmad Hassan, the enemy's Strategic Operations Commander. Colonel Dmitry Volkov, Head of Foreign Military Advisory Operations. Colonel Youssef Al-Zawahiri, Chief of Intelligence and Counterintelligence Operations. And Colonel Marcus Petrov, Logistics and Supply Chain Coordinator. Davidson paused, the weight of what he was about to say evident in his voice. JSOC is requesting immediate assessment of elimination possibilities. If we can neutralize all 4 targets simultaneously, we have full authorization to proceed. Priority Alpha clearance, direct from the Secretary of Defense. The implications were staggering. These 4 colonels represented the complete command structure of enemy operations in the region. Their simultaneous elimination could collapse enemy coordination, disrupt supply lines, blind intelligence networks, and potentially end organized resistance throughout the entire theater of operations. Colonel Davidson looked through his high-powered binoculars at the distant mountain stronghold, calculating distances and angles with the tactical expertise of 18 years in special operations. The mathematics were daunting. 2,380 yards was far beyond the effective range of any weapon system in their standard loadout. Even the most advanced sniper rifles had maximum effective ranges of 1,600 to 1,900 yards. Under perfect conditions. At 2,380 yards, environmental factors like wind patterns, humidity variations, altitude effects, and bullet drop made accurate shooting virtually impossible by conventional military standards. The target building was situated at a higher elevation than their position, adding additional complexity to ballistic calculations. Wind patterns at that altitude would be completely different from ground-level conditions. "Sir, negative on close approach," Davidson said into his radio after completing his tactical assessment. "Range is prohibitive for effective engagement. We'd need to move at least 900 yards closer, which would compromise our concealment, and almost certainly trigger their perimeter security response. Enemy has overlapping fields of fire covering all approach routes." Elena continued observing through her scope, but she was also listening carefully to the Delta Force team's tactical discussion. Through her advanced optics and laser range finding equipment, she had a crystal-clear view of the target building. More importantly, she could see 4 men in distinctive enemy officer uniforms standing near large windows on the building's 3rd floor, engaged in animated discussion over what appeared to be detailed tactical maps spread across a conference table. The targets were positioned in a way that seemed almost too perfect, standing near windows that provided clear sight lines from their observation position. Elena's tactical training told her that this might be the only opportunity they would have to eliminate all 4 targets simultaneously. Intelligence reports indicated that after this meeting, the colonels would disperse to different operational areas, making future targeting much more difficult. Elena made calculations in her head that the Delta Force team couldn't see. Wind speed at ground level was 14 miles per hour from the southwest, but her advanced meteorological training told her that wind patterns at altitude would be significantly different. The altitude differential between their position and the target was approximately 340 feet, which would affect air density and bullet trajectory. Temperature was 78 degrees Fahrenheit with 29% humidity, conditions that would affect bullet performance in specific, calculable ways. "Colonel Davidson," Elena said quietly, her voice carrying an undertone of absolute confidence that came from years of making impossible shots look routine. "I have visual confirmation on 4 high-value targets. Enemy colonels, 3rd floor, southwest-facing windows. Range 2,387 yards. Davidson crawled over to her position and looked through his own spotting scope, squinting to make out the distant figures. Even with his high-powered optics, the targets appeared as barely distinguishable silhouettes against the building's interior lighting. "I see them, Rodriguez. Christ, they're right there in the open, but they might as well be on the moon. No conventional weapon system can reach them from this range. The physics just don't work." Elena made a decision that would define not only her military career, but potentially change the strategic balance of the entire conflict. Her years of training, her unique background in advanced mathematics and physics, and her extensive experience with extreme-range precision shooting had prepared her for exactly this moment. "Sir, I can eliminate all 4 targets." Colonel Davidson looked at her with a mixture of surprise, skepticism, and the kind of professional assessment that comes from 18 years of evaluating impossible tactical situations. His experience had taught him to recognize when subordinates were overconfident But something in Elena's voice, a quiet certainty that he had only heard from the most elite operators, made him pause. Rodriguez, that's nearly 2,400 yards. The current world record for confirmed sniper kill is 2,475 yards. And that was achieved under perfect conditions, with multiple ranging shots and ideal weather. You're talking about 4 separate precision shots at extreme range against human-sized targets in sequence, with no opportunity for ranging adjustments. I understand the distance and the tactical requirements, sir. Davidson's extensive experience told him this was fantasy. But Elena's demeanor was completely different from the bravado he had seen from overconfident soldiers. There was no boasting, no dramatic claims, just a quiet statement of capability that reminded him of the most elite operators he had worked with over his career. Do you understand the physics involved here, Rodriguez? At that range, you're dealing with bullet drop of over 450 inches. Wind drift that could throw your shots off by multiple feet. Atmospheric pressure variations that change by the second. Temperature gradients at different altitudes that affect air density along the bullet's entire flight path. My best sniper, a guy who's been shooting professionally for 16 years, wouldn't attempt that shot. Elena looked through her scope again, her mind automatically calculating factors that standard military doctrine didn't even consider. Coriolis effect from Earth's rotation. At extreme ranges, the planet's rotation actually influences bullet flight path by several inches. Gyroscopic drift from bullet spin. Temperature gradients at different altitudes that would affect air density along the projectile's path. Barometric pressure variations that would influence bullet trajectory in measurable ways. Sir, with respect, your sniper is using conventional techniques designed for conventional ranges, Elena said calmly. This requires unconventional methods. Davidson stared at her for a long moment. In his 18 years with Delta Force, he had worked with some of the world's most elite shooters. Marine Corps scout snipers who could hit targets at ranges that defied belief. Army Special Forces marksmen with kill records that were legendary within the special operations community. Even CI, paramilitary specialists, whose capabilities were so classified that their existence was officially denied. None of them would have claimed they could make 4 consecutive precision shots at 2,380 yards against human targets. The probability calculations for hitting a human-sized target at that range, even once, approached mathematical impossibility according to conventional ballistics theory. Rodriguez, that's not confidence. That's mathematical impossibility. The probability calculations for hitting a human-sized target at that range, even once, approach 0. You're talking about defying the basic laws of physics. Elena sat down, her scope, and looked directly at the Delta Force commander with the steady gaze of someone who had done the impossible so many times it had become routine. She reached into her tactical kit and pulled out a weatherproof notebook filled with handwritten calculations, diagrams, and shooting data that looked more like advanced physics research than standard military documentation. Page after page of ballistic mathematics, environmental compensation formulas, and precision shooting data that incorporated variables most snipers had never even heard of. Equations that accounted for air density variations at different altitudes. Calculations that factored in the Coriolis effect at extreme ranges. Environmental compensation formulas that incorporated quantum mechanical effects on projectile flight. This documents every precision shot I've taken over 1,800 yards, sir. 43 confirmed eliminations at ranges between 1,800 and 2,650 yards. Environmental conditions, ballistic calculations, target specifications, and outcome analysis for each engagement. Davidson flipped through the notebook, his expression changing from skepticism to amazement. The mathematical calculations were beyond anything he had ever seen in military documentation. These weren't standard ballistic formulas. They incorporated advanced physics concepts that belonged in a university research laboratory, not a sniper's field manual. Rodriguez, where did you learn this level of ballistic mathematics? Family. Background, sir. My parents are both theoretical physicists. I grew up understanding the mathematics that govern projectile motion at extreme ranges. Standard military ballistics training is designed for conventional engagements. Extreme range. Precision shooting requires understanding physics that most snipers never encounter. Elena's explanation made sense of what Davidson was seeing in her documentation. Standard sniper training focused on ranges up to 1,200 yards under normal conditions. Beyond that, environmental factors became so complex that most military doctrine considered long-range precision shooting more art than science. But Elena's approach was different. She was treating extreme-range shooting as a pure mathematical problem, accounting for every variable that could influence bullet flight path and compensating for each factor through precise calculations and equipment adjustments. Davidson made a decision that went against every tactical manual, 18 years of Delta Force experience, and basic common sense about the limitations of small arms effectiveness. But he had learned to trust his instincts about exceptional operators, and everything about Elena Rodriguez told him she was exceptional in ways he had never encountered. Rodriguez, understand the consequences. If you miss even one shot, we compromise the entire mission. They'll know exactly where we are. Security will be tripled throughout the region, and we'll lose any future intelligence opportunities in this area. Understood completely, sir. And if you're captured during extraction, this mission never existed. No backup, no official recognition, no government acknowledgement of your presence here. Copy that, sir. Take the shots. Elena immediately began her pre-engagement routine, a precisely choreographed ritual she had perfected over hundreds of extreme-range eliminations. Every movement was deliberate and economical, designed to minimize any factor that could affect shooting accuracy. Environmental assessment came first. Wind speed was 14 miles per hour from the southwest at ground level, but her advanced meteorological training told her that wind patterns would be significantly different at the Yunthi 340-foot altitude differential between her position and the target. Mountain terrain created complex wind patterns that changed constantly, requiring real-time adjustments based on observable environmental indicators. Air temperature was 78 degrees Fahrenheit, humidity 29%, atmospheric pressure 28.97 inches of mercury, slightly lower than sea level standard due to their altitude, which would affect bullet trajectory in measurable ways. The barometric pressure reading was critical. Lower air density would reduce drag on the bullet, but also affect the predictability of wind drift calculations. Elena made microscopic adjustments to her scope's elevation and windage turrets, incorporating calculations that accounted for the Coriolis effect at extreme range. At ranges over 2,000 yards, Earth's rotation actually influences bullet flight path by several inches, a factor that most snipers never needed to consider, but was crucial for extreme range precision shooting. Her JTAC M200 intervention was specifically designed for extreme range precision shooting. The .408 JTAC cartridge provided superior ballistic performance at long ranges compared to conventional sniper ammunition. The rifle's advanced recoil management system and precision machined barrel were capable of accuracy that approached the theoretical limits of small arms technology. Through her scope, Elena could see all 4 targets with crystal clarity. Advanced optics system provided magnification and resolution that made the distant figures appear as if they were only a few hundred yards away. Colonel Hassan was standing closest to the leftmost window, gesturing toward tactical maps spread across the conference table. Colonel Volkov was positioned near the center window, taking notes on her tablet computer. Colonel Al-Zawahiri stood near the right window, apparently giving a briefing to the other officers. Colonel Petrov was partially visible through the rightmost window, studying documents that appeared to be logistics reports. All four men were engaged in animated discussion over what appeared to be battle plans and strategic coordination documents. They had no concept that 2,387 yards away, one of the world's most lethal precision shooters was calculating their elimination with mathematical certainty. Elena's breathing slowed to the controlled rhythm she had mastered through thousands of hours of advanced training. Her heart rate dropped to the minimal level that eliminated even microscopic movements from affecting her aim. This was the physiological state that only the most elite shooters ever achieved, a condition where physics, instinct, and training merged into something approaching supernatural accuracy. The Delta Force team watched in fascination and disbelief as Elena made final micro-adjustments to her rifle system. Colonel Davidson was tracking the targets through his spotting scope, while Staff Sergeant Thompson maintained communication with JSOC headquarters. The other operators maintained security perimeters and monitored for enemy patrol activity that might compromise their position. Range 2,387 yards, Elena whispered into her tactical radio. 4 high-value targets, 3rd floor, southwest windows. Atmospheric conditions optimal. Engaging in 20 seconds. Elena aligned her crosshairs on the first target, Colonel Hassan, standing closest to the leftmost window. She calculated the precise holdover required for bullet drop at that extreme range, over 450 inches of compensation for gravitational effects on the projectile. Wind drift compensation was more complex, requiring her to account for varying wind speeds at different altitudes along the bullet's flight path. The mathematical calculations were staggering in their complexity. Bullet flight time would be approximately 2.8 seconds, during which Earth's rotation would influence the projectile's path by 3.2 inches to the right. Air density variations at different altitudes would affect drag coefficients throughout the bullet's trajectory. Temperature gradients would influence air density in ways that required real-time compensation. Elena's finger found the trigger with a gentle, consistent pressure that separated amateur shooters from lethal professionals. The Chaytak's trigger had a clean, crisp break that she had tested thousands of times. Every aspect of the rifle's performance was precisely known and calculated into her shooting solution. Elena exhaled exactly half her breath and held it, reaching the moment of perfect physiological stillness that made impossible shots achievable. Her heart rate had dropped to 52 beats per minute, eliminating cardiovascular movement that could affect aim. Muscle tension was precisely controlled to provide stability without introducing tremor. The rifle fired with tremendous force, the .408 Chaytak muzzle blast, creating a signature that would be heard for miles in the mountain terrain. The massive bullet left the muzzle at 3,100 feet per second. Beginning a 2.8-second journey, it would cover 2,387 yards, while dropping over 450 inches and drifting 27 inches due to calculated wind conditions and Coriolis effect through her scope. Elena tracked the bullet's impact with professional detachment and immediately shifted to acquire the second target. The first shot had struck Colonel Hassan with surgical precision, and she was already calculating adjustments for the second engagement. Colonel Volkov had instinctively turned toward the sound of his colleague's body hitting the floor, presenting a perfect profile for precision shooting. Elena's training had taught her to expect this reaction. Humans instinctively turn toward unexpected sounds, creating predictable target presentation opportunities. Elena's second shot fired before the cue. Other colonels could fully process what was happening to them. The bullet struck Colonel Volkov in the head with the same surgical precision as the first shot, and Elena was already acquiring her third target, while the sound of the second shot was still echoing across the mountain terrain. Colonel al-Zawahiri was beginning to move toward cover, his military training finally overcoming the shock of seeing two colleagues eliminated in rapid succession. He was starting to realize they were under sniper attack, but he was still partially visible through the window frame. Elena's third shot required predictive shooting that combined mathematics, physics, and intuition developed through years of extreme range engagements. She led the target by exactly the calculated amount, compensating for his movement speed, direction, and the bullet's flight time. The mathematical calculations had to account for the target's acceleration as he moved toward cover, the angle of his movement relative to her position, and the time delay between trigger pull and bullet impact. The third shot found its mark with deadly precision, but Elena was already acquiring her fourth and most challenging target. Colonel Petrov had moved almost completely behind cover, realizing the building was under sniper attack. Only a small portion of his head and shoulder remained visible through the rightmost window, a target area of perhaps 8 inches by 10 inches at a range of nearly 2,400 yards. This was the shot that would determine whether her unprecedented sequence would be perfect or incomplete. The target area was smaller than any precision shooting standard, at a range that exceeded the theoretical capabilities of her weapon system. Against a target that was actively seeking cover, Elena made microscopic adjustments to her aim point, calculating the exact holdover and windage required for the smallest target at the greatest range. Her breathing remained perfectly controlled, her heart rate steady at 52 beats per minute, her muscle tension precisely calibrated for maximum stability. The fourth shot fired with the same mathematical precision as the previous three. The bullet struck the barely visible portion of Colonel Petrov's head with surgical accuracy, completing the most impossible sequence of precision shots in military history. 4 shots, 4 confirmed kills. Total elapsed time, 18.7 seconds. Colonel Davidson watched through his spotting scope in complete stunned silence. All 4 enemy colonels were down. Confirmed kills at a range that violated everything he understood about the limitations of small arms, effectiveness, and human shooting capability. "Unfucking believable," whispered Staff Sergeant Thompson, his voice filled with awe. "She actually did it. 4 for 4 at nearly 2,400 yards. Elena was already breaking down her shooting position with the efficient movements of someone who had done this many times before. Enemy security forces would respond within minutes once they discovered the bodies, and their position would be completely compromised. Standard protocol required immediate tactical withdrawal to avoid enemy counterattack. Confirmed elimination of all 4 high-value targets, Elena reported calmly into her radio. Recommend immediate tactical withdrawal to Extraction Point Bravo. Colonel Davidson was still processing what he had just witnessed. In his 18 years of special operations, he had never seen shooting that defied the basic laws of physics and probability theory. The mathematical impossibility of what Elena had just accomplished would be discussed in classified briefings for decades. "Rodriguez, how the hell did you make those shots?" Elena smiled as she secured her rifle in its tactical case, her movements efficient and practiced. "Physics, sir. Applied mathematics and extensive practice." The Delta Force team began their extraction route, moving quickly through mountain terrain that would mask their withdrawal from the target area. Behind them, the enemy stronghold was erupting in chaos as security forces discovered the bodies of their 4 most senior commanders. The extraction required 6 hours of movement through treacherous mountain terrain to reach their helicopter. Landing zone? Elena moved with the same fluid efficiency she had demonstrated throughout the mission, her conditioning and training evident in her ability to maintain the pace despite the physical demands of mountain warfare. as they move through. Rocky passes toward their extraction point. Colonel Davidson caught up with Elena during a brief tactical halt. The magnitude of what she had accomplished was still sinking in, and he needed to understand who he had been working with. Rodriguez, I need to know who you really are. That shooting was mathematically impossible, and you made it look routine. Elena looked at the Delta Force commander with the quiet confidence of someone who had just changed the course of a war. Her expression was calm, professional, betraying none of the satisfaction she might have felt at completing such an unprecedented sequence of shots. Sir, officially, I'm Master Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, Army Sniper, providing reconnaissance support. And unofficially? Unofficially, I'm the reason enemy commanders require armored bunkers and underground facilities for their meetings. Davidson nodded slowly, understanding that he had witnessed something that would be classified at the highest levels. What's your actual security clearance level? Above your clearance, sir. With respect, Davidson smiled despite himself. In the special operations community, there were always operators whose capabilities and classifications exceeded what appeared in their official documentation. Elena Rodriguez was clearly one of those individuals. Fair enough. But I want you to know that what you accomplished today was the most incredible shooting I've ever witnessed in 18 years of special operations. Thank you, sir. One more. Question. What's your actual longest confirmed kill? Elena considered the question carefully, weighing operational security against professional courtesy. Sir, that information is classified, but let's just say that today wasn't my personal record. The helicopter extraction proceeded without incident, lifting them away from the mountain stronghold as intelligence assets began assessing the strategic implications of the mission. The simultaneous elimination of 4 enemy colonels represented a devastating blow to enemy command structure that would reverberate throughout the entire theater of operations. During the flight back to base, Elena stared out at the mountain terrain below, already analyzing the mission and considering improvements to her extreme range shooting techniques. For her, the 4 shots at 2,387 yards represented not a culmination, but a stepping stone toward even more challenging engagements. Colonel Davidson used the flight time to compile his after-action report, struggling to find language that would adequately describe what he had witnessed. Military documentation required precise, factual reporting, but the mathematical impossibility of Elena's shooting defied conventional description. 3 months later, intelligence reports confirmed that the elimination of the 4 enemy colonels had completely collapsed organized resistance in the region. Without their strategic leadership, enemy forces had fragmented into ineffective local groups that posed no significant threat to coalition operations. The strategic impact was more comprehensive than anyone had anticipated. Colonel Hassan's death had eliminated the enemy's strategic planning capability. Colonel Volkov's elimination had severed foreign military advisory support. Colonel al-Zawahiri's death had blinded enemy intelligence networks. Colonel Petrov's elimination had collapsed supply chain coordination. Master Sergeant Elena Rodriguez received no official recognition for her achievement. Her personnel file continued to list her as a routine Army sniper with standard qualifications. But in the classified archives of Special Operations Command, her 4 shots were recorded as the most strategically significant sniper engagement. In modern military history, the ballistic analysis alone required 3 separate classified studies to document. Military scientists spent months attempting to understand how Elena had accomplished shots that exceeded the theoretical capabilities of her weapon system. Her environmental calculations incorporated physics concepts that weren't part of standard military ballistics training. Colonel Davidson was promoted to Brigadier General and assigned to lead Special Operations Command's advanced training programs. He never forgot the day he watched impossible shots become routine, and he made sure that future Special Operations snipers trained for engagements beyond the theoretical limits of their weapons. Elena continued her classified assignments, taking shots that officially never happened against targets whose elimination changed the balance of conflicts around the world. Her call sign, Ghost, became legend among those with clearance to know the truth. But her existence remained officially denied. Intelligence analysts studying the strategic implications of her missions estimated that Elena's precision shooting had altered the outcome of conflicts across multiple theaters of operations. Enemy commanders who had previously operated openly began requiring extensive security measures that significantly reduced their operational effectiveness. The psychological impact was as significant as the strategic results. Enemy leadership lived in constant fear of elimination by a sniper whose capabilities exceeded anything they thought possible. Meetings that had previously been conducted in comfortable conference rooms were moved to underground bunkers with no exterior sightlines. Years later, when military historians studied the turning points of various conflicts, they identified the collapse of enemy command structures as decisive moments. But the official records would always show that these turning points resulted from conventional military operations, not impossible shots by a sniper whose existence was classified beyond acknowledgement. Elena's techniques were eventually incorporated into advanced special operations training programs, though the full extent of her capabilities remained classified. Selected snipers with appropriate security clearances were taught modified versions of her environmental calculation methods and extreme-range shooting techniques. The mathematical formulas Elena had developed were studied by military scientists and eventually led to advances in ballistic computer systems and precision shooting technology. Her understanding of atmospheric effects at extreme ranges contributed to improvements in military ballistics that benefited conventional snipers operating at standard ranges. But Elena herself remained in the shadows, continuing to take shots. That changed the world while officially never existing. Her missions were planned at the highest levels of military command and executed with mathematical precision that bordered on the supernatural. The Delta Force commander had said no one could make that shot. Elena Rodriguez had proven that some people aren't no one. They're the reason impossible becomes inevitable. And sometimes, that's exactly what changes the world. In the classified world of special operations, legends are made not through official recognition, but through whispered stories of impossible achievements. Elena Rodriguez had become one of those legends, a ghost who eliminated enemies at ranges that defied physics and changed the course of history with mathematical precision. Her story would never appear in military histories or official documentation, but in the darkest corners of special operations, when elite snipers gathered to discuss the theoretical limits of their profession, they would speak in hushed tones about Ghost, the sniper who made impossible shots, look routine, and prove that some people could indeed change the world. 4 bullets at a time, the mathematical impossibility of her achievements would be studied for decades. But Elena Rodriguez would continue operating in the shadows, taking shots that officially never happened against targets whose elimination shaped the future of global conflicts. Because sometimes, changing the world requires someone who can make the impossible look inevitable. And Master Sergeant Elena Rodriguez was exactly that someone.